When I was a little kid, I used to draw all the time. I would draw family, landscapes, made-up creatures, anything that came to mind. I felt like I could allow those pictures to flow directly from my brain to the page. It never felt like there was any barrier between those two. Here's a mixed media collage masterpiece that I made with my mom at the time, just as a little show and tell example. Can you imagine as an adult having the kind of confidence that it would take to make something like that? The affirmations, the chaos, the unflattering photo, all of it. Like, it's just perfect. But the only reason I was able to make that as a kid is I didn't yet have a concept of skill, talent, or the value of a finished product beyond the joy of creating it. There was no good or bad. There was a joyful frenzy of creativity and then something left over, almost a byproduct of the act. So in this video, I'm gonna break down what I think holds us back from expressing ourselves and share how I overcame those barriers, which ultimately led me to return to playing the cello 7 years after quitting and then kind of accidentally becoming a Billboard #1 string arranger. So let's get into it. If you're watching this, I can almost guarantee that you've said something like, I'm not creative, or I don't have the talent, or I'm just not an artist. Our society has a knee-jerk reaction to art that moves us. Whether it's an actor on stage, the writer behind our favorite novel, or the musician on the radio, our response is usually to label that creator as talented. But I think the word talent does harm. For the person being told they're talented, it can set up expectations of perfection. But even more insidiously, when we label someone else as talented, we are implying that we ourselves are not. By this simple act of labeling, we're creating an in-group and an out-group, an us and them, the talented and untalented. It implies that by some supernatural force, some of us were bestowed with the ability to create while others weren't. We all have some version of a voice in our head that's telling us that we're not good enough. I have one right now that's telling me that this video is gonna suck and make absolutely no sense. I have another that tells me that the music I'm recording every day will never live up to the work of the people that I admire. But what I've learned over the years of creating things day in and day out is that that voice is not one of reason or objective truth. Yeah, it may have a good point that you have less experience than someone else in a particular pursuit, but it lies to you when it tells you that that alone is enough reason to never try the things that you want to do. I find this particularly troubling because in my experience, when that voice tells me I'm incapable of something, it's often because that pursuit holds deep meaning to me, and I'm just afraid of failing. So we let that voice in our head protect us by telling us that we just don't have the talent. And this is the second way that the word talent does us harm. It tells us that if we're not among the gifted few, then there's no point in even trying. The first time I picked up a cello, I had no idea how to play. I had to learn the mechanics the same as anyone else. I had to push through making the ugly sounds in order to start finding the beautiful ones. So to illustrate this, I want to share with you two stories of how I overcame this inner critic telling me that I wasn't good enough. The first thing it told me was, you can't sing. I just realized the shirt I was wearing was green and I popped out a green screen, so I am a genius. From first grade all the way through 8th, I was fortunate enough to go to a school where we sang songs and made music in class every day. But from first grade all the way through 8th, I thought that I couldn't sing. My throat always felt constricted. I was constantly straining. I felt awkward, tired, and just out of my depth. I spent all of those years telling myself that I just wasn't a singer and that was a fact of life. And even worse than that, not being able to sing became a part of the identity that I carried with me into my teens. Then I arrived at college to study music. The first week of class, I was stopped in the hall by a fellow student. She told me to come audition for the choir because they always need more low voices. The thought of a literal panel of judges telling me what I already knew about myself and kicking me out of the room was almost too much to bear. But fortunately, I was just curious enough to go to the audition and see what happened. They started me with a vocal warm-up to test my range. As the pitch got higher and higher, my voice started getting that same constriction it always did. My voice topped out way earlier than the accompanist expected, and I actually saw them look down at the keys in surprise. It was kind of my worst nightmare. But as we started moving back down the range, we kept going and going and going. Everyone's eyes kind of widened in surprise as they realized what I hadn't known. I wasn't a tenor, and I kind of wasn't even a baritone. I was actually a bass. I got into the choir, and the next thing I knew, I was in a tuxedo surrounded by nearly 100 other singers performing Beethoven's Ninth with the Santa Cruz Symphony. Part of what had held me back all those years was the belief that in order to express myself, I needed to have a complete command over technique first. Many of us hold this belief about expression, and it often goes back to something that we were told in childhood. Maybe it was a parent that made a comment about our voice. Maybe a teacher told us our drawing wasn't good enough. Maybe a friend teased us about the way we told a story. But when we share something that is deeply personal or meaningful and someone shoots it down, we tend to hold on to that criticism for way longer than it has any use. And that leads me to the second thing that voice in my head told me. You'll never make it as a cellist. When I was about 11 years old, my cello teacher handed me the prelude to the first Bach cello suite, and I was absolutely enamored with the piece. We worked on it for months, and I felt this deep connection to the music and a yearning to express something inside myself through it. I would put all of those angsty preteen emotions that I was feeling into every note, really working to express something that I knew lived in me and on that page. But my teacher had a different idea. After a while of working on the piece, I wasn't making the progress that she had hoped for. She took a step back and said something to me that would stay with me for a really long time. She told me that I was too emotional in my playing, and that there was no place for that kind of emotion before my technique could support it. So I pulled out my pencil, and in my preteen scrawl, I wrote "no feeling" across the top of the page. This hurt me deeply. Looking around at the rest of her students, I realized that they were all progressing faster than I was. Her telling me that I couldn't express myself before I mastered technique was the beginning of me losing hope that I would ever be able to express the feelings that I had inside me. But in an attempt to be a good student, I worked really hard at getting the mechanics of the instrument into my hands without feeling. And over the years, through all the music that I worked on with her, I worked to rein in that expression. But when I was alone and feeling pent up, anxious, or angry, I would lock myself in the room, turn out the lights, grab my cello, put on headphones with my favorite song, and just play the cello as hard as I could. It was a frenzied, sweaty, emotional affair that never sounded good, but it was the cathartic release that I was searching for. But after years of this push and pull between expression and technique, I finally succumbed to the voice in my head that was telling me that I wasn't good enough. So I quit music entirely. I sold my cello, and I vowed never to play again. I didn't make music at all for almost 2 years, but I didn't touch the cello for nearly 7. It wasn't until I decided that I cared more about expressing myself than being a master technician that I was able to even touch the instrument again. But fast forward to today, and I want to paint you a picture of what my life looks like. My clients send me a song that they want cello recorded on. I close the door to my studio, put my headphones on, hit play on their song, and play the cello as hard as I can. It's a frenzied, sweaty, emotional affair, and it doesn't always sound good, but yes, it is exactly what I did as a kid. This is who I am. This imperfect, emotional being who wants nothing more than to just express what I'm feeling. It has nothing to do with talent, but it has everything to do with committing myself to the act of creation in spite of the voices telling me that I am not good enough. But because I've been able to commit to that uncomfortable process, I get to do the thing that feels most authentic to me every day with people that I genuinely look up to. But Harley, you say, art is pointless. Music is just noise. No one cares what I do. And that brings us to why making art matters. At the end of the day, does it matter if there's one more song, one more piece of art, one more poem in the world? I mean, in a sense, no, it doesn't. We have enough, right? But here's why I think that you engaging in the process of creativity is important. Creation is not a solitary act. Even when done alone or when the work is never shared, the act of making something connects us to one another. As we process joy, fear, or anger, expressing these feelings through making music, painting, or whatever your preferred medium is, helps us tap into and understand our shared human experience. Our whole world is built on expression. From art to science, from music to technology, we build our shared existence through these moments of confronting our inner critics and making something beautiful anyway. It can be as simple as learning a new chord on a guitar or as complex as composing a symphony. But these small acts of defiance against our inner critics telling us that we're not worthy is what brings us together as humans. At the start of any creative endeavor, it's impossible not to feel at least a bit afraid or overwhelmed. We tend to focus on the difference between our desired outcome and our feared worst-case scenario. What if it's ugly? What if no one likes what I make? So one thing I've done to combat that fear that I still feel every day is keep around artwork that I made as a kid. By getting to look at these early attempts at creativity. Oh God, wait, I just remembered another. By getting to look at these early attempts of my own self-expression every day, I'm constantly reminded of a simple truth that's way too easy to forget. The things we make don't have to be perfect to be beautiful. So what if it's ugly? So what if no one likes it? I sat down and turned an idea into a thing. That fact alone is absolutely insane. And not to get all philosophical on you, but if you think about it, the moment we're born, we begin singing. As we mature, we start to imitate the sounds we hear and learn to form that into speech. We finger paint, we dance, we play, and every moment of that is an act of creativity. I believe that every one of us has something that we're yearning to express. Some well of emotion, belief, or conviction inside us that we want to see made manifest. So how do we stay creative when we grow up? by practicing not letting that voice win. It's as simple and as challenging as that. The only way I got to where I am is by showing up and confronting that voice telling me I'm not good enough every day and saying, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Maybe someone farther along this journey than I am can tell you differently, but I don't think that voice ever goes away. I kind of think you just get better at talking to it and working around it with practice. So I guess my advice would be this. Find ways to remind yourself that the stakes aren't that high and that voice in your head telling you that you're not good enough is just like a dumb liar. I know it's probably not the panacea that you were hoping for, but showing up every day to make something is what got your heroes to where they are. But if you've got ideas for how to stay creative, leave them in the comments below. I have a feeling that we'll come up with something pretty good together. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe so I know that and keep making more like it. The act of creation is powerful. Don't let that voice in your head that you're not worthy of participating. I'll see you in the next video.